When the guardian of justice turns into the devil, who is left to protect you? The FBI symbol of authority and integrity has spawned some of the nation's most dangerous criminals. From treason to corruption, from murder to betrayal, what truth can you trust when it's manipulated by those who wield absolute power? Case 1. Robert Hanssen. Robert Philip Hanssen was born on April 18, 1904, in Chicago, Illinois. On the surface, Hanssen was the archetypal FBI agent, respected, quiet, and fiercely private, educated, intelligent, and a devout family man. Colleagues rarely suspected the darkness that hid within him, but behind his calm demeanor lay a deep-seated dissatisfaction, one that would propel him toward one of the most notorious espionage crimes in American history. Between 1979 and 2001, while stationed in critical FBI offices in New York and Washington, D.C., Hanssen operated as a double agent, privately. He established contact with the Soviet intelligence agency, the KGB, and later continued with its successor, the Russian intelligence service SVR. Under the codename Ramon Garcia, Hanssen systematically sold thousands of classified documents containing highly sensitive national security information. His betrayal compromised multiple U.S. counterintelligence operations and exposed countless undercover agents, some of whom subsequently faced execution in Russia. Hanssen's method was disturbingly meticulous. He communicated exclusively through covert means, employing encrypted messages, carefully hidden documents, and secret drop sites. He would seal classified materials in black plastic trash bags, leaving them discreetly under bridges and quiet parks around suburban Virginia. For years, federal investigators failed to detect this grave internal threat lurking at the heart of America's most trusted agency. Financial gain initially motivated Hanssen's espionage. Over 2 decades, he received cash payments and diamonds totaling approximately $1.4 million. But deeper psychological motives soon emerged. Experts would later describe Hanssen as possessing a dangerous combination of narcissism, bitterness, and arrogance. He took pleasure from outsmarting his colleagues, contemptuously believing the FBI incapable of identifying the mole within their ranks. In one haunting message to his Russian handlers, Hanssen chillingly wrote, "The United States can be erratically careless, and my colleagues at the FBI are arrogant but sloppy. Rest assured, they will never catch me." But Hanssen's arrogance ultimately triggered his downfall. By early 2001, FBI counterintelligence was closing in. After the agency received classified intelligence from a Russian informant pinpointing Hanssen as the mole, investigators secretly monitored him for weeks. On February 18, 2001, in Foxstone Park, Virginia, Hanssen performed what would be his final clandestine exchange, placing classified documents wrapped in trash bags beneath a footbridge. Within moments, federal agents confronted and arrested him at gunpoint, the dramatic culmination of America's most devastating internal espionage case. During his interrogation, Hanssen maintained a chillingly detached composure. He calmly and methodically admitted to espionage, recounting details without emotion or remorse. Colleagues noted his clinical indifference, describing him as frighteningly logical and disturbingly rational. To Hanssen, betrayal was simply transactional, a mere matter of calculation and risk assessment, devoid of moral consideration. Hanssen's trial captivated and shocked the nation. On July 6, 2001, to avoid the death penalty, he pleaded guilty to 15 counts of espionage and conspiracy. As part of the plea agreement, he disclosed the full extent of his treachery. Unveiling decades of systematic betrayal, Hanssen was sentenced to 15 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, and is currently incarcerated at ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison in Colorado, known as America's most secure and isolated prison. Perhaps most chilling was Hanssen's final statement during sentencing. Without visible remorse, he declared to the court, "I apologize for my behavior. I am shamed by it. But shame is not an adequate punishment. The betrayal I committed has left an indelible mark." His cold and calculated apology left observers with a haunting uncertainty. Was this genuine remorse or merely another mask of final manipulation from the ultimate spy to this day? The full extent of Hansen's damage to national security remains classified. Experts describe the fallout from his betrayal as permanent and catastrophic, a chilling reminder of the vulnerability within even the most secure institutions. Robert Hansen remains an unsettling embodiment of duality, outwardly loyal, inwardly deceitful, trusted yet treacherous. His story resonates as a stark warning, revealing the terrifying damage possible when trust is betrayed from within. Case 2. John Connolly. John Joseph Connolly, Jr. was born on August 1, 1940 in Boston, Massachusetts. Raised in South Boston, an area known as Southie. Infamous for its entrenched Irish-American organized crime networks, Connolly grew up alongside James Whitey Bulger, who would later become the city's most feared mobster. From an early age, their lives intertwined, a fateful connection that eventually transformed Connolly from a promising federal agent into one of America's most notorious cases of FBI corruption. Connolly joined the FBI in 1968, quickly rising within the bureau. Recognized as a diligent investigator with a specialty in organized crime, assigned to his hometown Boston office, he was uniquely positioned to penetrate the criminal underworld using insider connections. His superiors praised him for developing confidential informants who provided vital intelligence against violent gangs in New England. Unbeknownst to them, Connolly's prized informant was none other than Whitey Bulger himself. From the mid-1970s through the early 1990s, Connolly secretly cultivated an illicit partnership with Bulger and Bulger's close associate, Stephen the Rifleman Fleming. Under the guise of gathering critical intelligence, Connolly fed Bulger sensitive FBI information, names of informants, planned raids, and internal investigations. This allowed Bulger's criminal empire to thrive unchecked, resulting directly in the brutal murders of at least 3 informants whose identities Connolly had deliberately exposed. Connolly's method of crime was insidious, blending seamlessly his lawful and criminal worlds. He falsified reports, withheld vital intelligence, and fabricated investigative results. His professional status as an FBI agent gave him near absolute immunity from suspicion, even as innocent victims paid with their lives. His fellow agents, trusting and unsuspecting, referred to Connolly as Agent Rockstar, unaware that beneath his polished exterior lay deceit and betrayal of the most destructive kind. What drove Connolly's betrayal was not simply greed. The psychology behind his crimes was complicated by personal loyalties and the intoxicating allure of power. Experts later described Connolly as experiencing a dangerous identification with Bulger's world, a disturbing personal admiration and attachment toward the ruthless mobster he had known since childhood. His life embodied a duality rarely seen a respected FBI agent publicly hunting the same criminals he privately shielded. Federal suspicion finally turned toward Connolly in the late 1990s. After multiple informants disappeared or were found brutally murdered under suspicious circumstances, following a painstaking internal investigation, federal prosecutors assembled substantial evidence linking Connolly directly to Bulger's organization. Connolly was arrested in December '99, triggering shockwaves that rocked the FBI to its core. The Boston FBI office, once a symbol of integrity, became a public embarrassment, a stark representation of the dangers of unchecked authority. During his trial, Connolly remained disturbingly defiant. Witness testimonies laid bare his detailed involvement in murders carried out by Bulger's gang. One prosecution witness chillingly recounted Connolly's warning to an informant shortly before the informant was executed. "If you testify, you'll end up in a dumpster." The court presented overwhelming evidence of Connolly's duplicity wiretaps, informant testimonies, falsified documents, all painting a dark picture of systematic betrayal. Throughout, Connolly showed little remorse, portraying himself as unfairly persecuted for simply performing his duties. Connolly was initially convicted in 2002 on charges of obstruction of justice, racketeering, and lying to an FBI agent. He received a 10-year federal prison sentence. In 2008, additional state charges in Florida, stemming directly from one of the informant murders, brought him back to court. In November 2008, a Florida jury found Connolly guilty of second-degree murder in the death of businessman John Callahan, who had been brutally executed in Miami on Bulger's orders. Aided by Connolly's leaked information, Connolly was sentenced to 40 years, effectively a life sentence, sealing his fate behind prison bars. Today, Connolly remains imprisoned, a vivid cautionary tale of how authority and criminality can dangerously merge. His betrayal left deep scars not merely upon victims and their families, but on public trust itself. He stands as a stark, haunting reminder that even those tasked with enforcing justice can succumb to corruption, ego, and darkness. Perhaps most unsettlingly, his final courtroom words still echo through the public consciousness, delivered coldly and without remorse. "I never intended for anyone to get hurt, but when you deal with criminals, people get hurt. That's the cost of business." Case 3. Charles McGonigal. Charles McGonigal was once considered among the most powerful and respected FBI agents in the United States, born and raised in Ohio. McGonigal was methodical, precise, and commanding a prototype of an accomplished federal agent. Throughout his extensive career, McGonigal ascended rapidly through the ranks, eventually becoming the special agent in charge of counterintelligence at the FBI's prestigious New York field office. From his Manhattan headquarters, he was entrusted with the nation's most sensitive investigations, specifically tasked with countering espionage from Russia and other foreign adversaries. Yet, beneath his polished exterior and esteemed reputation, McGonigal harbored a hidden vulnerability and insatiable appetite for wealth and influence. Unbeknownst to his colleagues, this ambition would soon drive him towards a path of corruption, transforming him into a notorious figure who would later be branded as the FBI's highest-ranking traitor in recent history. The events leading to McGonigal's downfall began quietly in 2021. Utilizing connections developed through decades of clandestine work, he established unauthorized ties with sanctioned Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska, a billionaire businessman closely linked to the Kremlin and subject to U.S. economic sanctions since 2018. Over a series of clandestine meetings in upscale hotels across New York, London, and Tirana, Albania, McGonigal secretly accepted significant financial sums from Deripaska's network, amounting to hundreds of thousands of dollars. In return, McGonigal agreed to undertake discreet investigations designed to benefit Deripaska directly, leveraging classified intelligence, operational methods, and internal FBI resources to fulfill his clients' demands. McGonigal's methods combined audacity with calculated manipulation. He covertly accessed FBI databases, surveillance information, and intelligence dossiers. He also exploited his authoritative position to suppress inquiries into Deripaska's operations, deliberately misleading fellow agents by falsifying internal reports and redirecting investigative priorities. McGonigal became increasingly adept at using his privileged access and extensive network within the FBI to hide his illicit activities in plain sight. The gravity of his betrayal was unprecedented. Though McGonigal's espionage did not result in direct physical harm, his actions significantly compromised critical intelligence operations, targeting Russia and other hostile entities. Operational resources were diverted, and ongoing investigations against high-level Russian oligarchs stalled, severely damaging U.S. national security efforts. Furthermore, his betrayal profoundly damaged public trust in the integrity and impartiality of America's premier law enforcement agency. Yet, McGonigal's motivations remained troublingly pedestrian. Investigators found no ideological sympathies or political convictions fueling his treachery. Rather, psychological assessments characterized him as driven purely by financial greed and the desire for status and comfort beyond the reach of his FBI salary. McGonigal lived extravagantly, traveling internationally in private jets, staying in luxury hotels, and socializing among the global financial elite, activities incompatible with his official government pay. By late 2022, FBI counterintelligence teams noticed irregularities within internal databases and discovered unauthorized access to classified files. As suspicion grew, electronic surveillance and covert tracking identified McGonigal's surreptitious meetings with Deripaska's associates. On January 21, 2023, federal agents confronted and arrested McGonigal at New York's JFK International Airport. Moments after he arrived from an overseas trip, agents meticulously confiscated electronic devices and encrypted communications, confirming his connections with Deripaska's network, providing irrefutable evidence of betrayal during interrogation. McGonigal initially maintained confident defiance, denying allegations vehemently, yet confronted with overwhelming digital and forensic evidence. His demeanor gradually shifted towards silent resignation. In court proceedings beginning in December 23, prosecutors detailed the alarming scope of McGonigal's betrayal. Testimonies from former colleagues portrayed his actions as a shocking violation of professional ethics and national security responsibilities. The presiding judge sternly condemned McGonigal's betrayal during sentencing, asserting, "You occupied one of the most trusted positions within the FBI, responsible for safeguarding the United States against precisely this kind of exploitation. Instead, your greed rendered you precisely what you vowed to combat: an agent of foreign influence." McGonigal was subsequently sentenced to a federal prison term of 8 years, reflecting both the severity of his crimes and his eventual cooperation with federal authorities. His incarceration at a federal penitentiary was accompanied by strict monitoring to prevent further exposure to sensitive materials or communication channels. Charles McGonigal's legacy within the FBI is now one of severe caution. His fall from grace underscores a chilling vulnerability even the highest ranking. Most trusted figures within America's law enforcement community can succumb to corruption when personal ambition eclipses duty and ethics. Today, McGonigal remains a sobering example, a stark reminder of the ever-present danger posed by internal corruption within vital security institutions. Case 4. Mark Rossini. Mark Thomas Rossini was a name synonymous with dedication and trustworthiness in the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Born and raised in New York City, Rossini built a reputation as a meticulous and disciplined FBI special agent, quickly gaining recognition for his tireless work in counterterrorism and financial crime investigations. His career trajectory suggested unwavering integrity and dedication to public service. Yet, despite his exceptional credentials and commendations, Rossini would soon find himself ensnared in scandal, ultimately becoming a cautionary tale of compromised judgment within America's premier law enforcement agency. In 2007, while stationed at the FBI's headquarters in Washington, D.C., Rossini committed an unthinkable breach of protocol. At the heart of his downfall lay his romantic involvement with a glamorous Hollywood actress, Linda Fiorentino, a rising star renowned for her roles in notable Hollywood films, became embroiled in legal conflicts involving high-profile private investigator Anthony Pellicano, then under scrutiny by federal authorities for illegal surveillance and wiretapping. It was this personal relationship blurring Rossini's professional judgment that compelled him toward his fateful decision. Between January 2007 and July 2007, Rossini deliberately and unlawfully accessed confidential FBI databases on multiple occasions. Utilizing his clearance and position, he retrieved highly sensitive files related to the ongoing federal investigation into Pellicano's illicit activities. After gaining unauthorized access, Rossini passed confidential FBI information directly to Fiorentino, who had a personal interest in the Pellicano probe. By doing so, Rossini irreparably violated FBI standards, compromising ongoing investigations and endangering the agency's credibility. Rossini's method was straightforward, yet astonishingly brazen. Operating openly from his workstation within FBI headquarters, he repeatedly breached secure servers without official authorization, viewing sensitive investigative files and FBI reports containing privileged information. At the time, Rossini possessed the necessary clearance to access these systems, allowing his actions to initially evade detection. Investigators later described his methods as overt, yet difficult to detect due to his authorized presence within the database. The alarming ease with which he accessed restricted information illustrated stark vulnerabilities within the FBI's internal safeguards. The consequences were immediate, although Rossini's actions resulted in no direct fatalities or violent outcomes. The damage to the FBI's internal security and public trust was significant. Federal authorities were compelled to reassess their data protection measures, emphasizing tighter oversight to prevent future breaches. The incident also disrupted the Pelicano investigation, complicating federal efforts and delaying critical legal proceedings against the infamous private investigator. Psychological evaluations conducted after his arrest revealed Rossini's unusual motivation. Unlike traditional traitors, Rossini exhibited no political ideology or financial desperation. Instead, FBI psychologists characterized him as driven primarily by misguided emotional attachment, a dangerous willingness to compromise ethical boundaries for personal affection. This psychological vulnerability, combined with his prestigious position, ultimately proved catastrophic. The FBI became aware of Rossini's unauthorized activity through routine internal audits. Federal investigators detected suspicious database access patterns traced directly to Rossini's workstation. Upon thorough review, Rossini was confronted and swiftly suspended from duty, faced with irrefutable digital evidence, time-stamped access logs, internal security footage, and documented breaches. Rossini promptly confessed his involvement. His arrest in late 2008 marked an abrupt and ignominious end to his once promising career. Rossini's trial unfolded swiftly in federal court. On December 8, 2008, facing charges of illegally accessing sensitive government computers, Rossini pleaded guilty to all counts. In sentencing, the presiding judge sternly reprimanded Rossini's alarming disregard for his sworn duties, highlighting the broader implications of his actions. Your betrayal was not motivated by greed or ideology, but by personal attachment. However, that makes it no less serious. You've compromised the trust placed in you by your colleagues, your agency, and your country. Ultimately, Rossini received a sentence of 12 months probation, monetary fines, and permanent dismissal from the FBI. His relatively lenient sentence reflected both his cooperation and the absence of tangible harm to national security. Yet, it could never undo the reputational damage inflicted upon both himself and the FBI. Following his sentencing, Rossini expressed deep regret over his choices, publicly stating, "I made an unforgivable mistake. I violated a sacred trust. I can only hope my failure serves as a lasting lesson for others entrusted with similar responsibilities." Today, Mark Rossini remains a sobering example of how quickly and disastrously personal entanglements can unravel professional integrity. His case resonates as a stark reminder within the FBI community, underscoring the absolute importance of maintaining unwavering ethical standards even when personal emotions and relationships threaten to override professional responsibilities. Rossini's downfall vividly illustrates the perpetual tension between human vulnerability and professional duty, an enduring lesson on the delicate balance between personal and professional worlds. Above all, his story offers a chilling reminder in an institution predicated upon absolute trust. Even a single, fleeting lapse in judgment can have devastating, lasting consequences. Case 5. Kenneth Williams. Kenneth Williams was a career FBI special agent, highly respected for his meticulous attention to detail and disciplined approach to investigations. Stationed in the FBI's Phoenix, Arizona, office, Williams had earned a reputation as a relentless and perceptive investigator, specializing in counterterrorism and national security threats. Colleagues described him as focused, analytical, and methodical, precisely the kind of agent trusted to foresee and prevent threats to national security. Yet, it would ultimately be an ignored memo authored by Williams himself that would place him at the center of one of the FBI's most troubling internal controversies. In the summer of 2001, months before the catastrophic terrorist attacks on September 11th, Williams identified and began investigating suspicious activity among several foreign nationals residing in the United States. Working in the Phoenix field office, Williams became alarmed by the unusual behavior of several Middle Eastern men enrolled in aviation training schools in Arizona. Through detailed analysis and extensive fieldwork, he noted an alarming pattern: these individuals were undertaking flight training without clear or legitimate career purposes. Troublingly, some of them openly expressed extreme anti-American sentiments. Alarmed by the potential implications, Williams meticulously documented his findings in what would become known as the Phoenix Memo. In this internal document, dated July 10, 2001, Williams explicitly warned FBI headquarters of potential terrorist threats from Middle Eastern students enrolled in U.S. aviation schools. His memo strongly recommended that FBI headquarters launch a nationwide investigation to further monitor and analyze these suspicious flight school enrollments. However, Williams's stark warning tragically went unheeded. FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., received the memo, but inexplicably failed to act upon its urgent recommendations. The memo, filed away within layers of bureaucratic process, was essentially forgotten until after the devastating terrorist attacks on September 11, 2001, in a chilling aftermath. Investigators discovered that several hijackers responsible for the catastrophic events had undergone aviation training under circumstances eerily similar to those described in Williams' memo. Williams' method of investigation and reporting had been professional and rigorous. He conducted thorough field interviews, tracked suspicious individuals diligently, and compiled a clearly reasoned analysis of the potential threat. Despite his persistent effort and repeated follow-ups, his warnings were effectively silenced by institutional bureaucracy and procedural inertia. After September 11th, Williams was thrust into the national spotlight. While he had committed no criminal offense or intentional wrongdoing, his ignored warning exposed profound weaknesses within the FBI's internal communication and threat assessment processes. Internal reviews highlighted troubling failures to connect critical intelligence dots, with Williams' disregarded memo cited as emblematic of these systemic lapses. In the intense public scrutiny that followed, Williams himself became a reluctant public figure, symbolizing both the diligent agent attempting to safeguard national security and the tragic consequences of bureaucratic neglect. A comprehensive internal investigation conducted by the FBI later revealed Williams's psychological stress and deep personal anguish. Despite his professionalism, Williams carried immense guilt over his perceived failure to push harder for action. Colleagues later described a noticeable shift in his demeanor following 9/11, noting his silent frustration and disappointment in his superiors. Federal authorities conducted multiple public hearings, during which Williams's memo became a key focal point, facing questions from congressional investigators. Williams delivered calm yet haunting testimony, stating with quiet authority, "I did my job. I warned my superiors, but my warnings were simply not prioritized." Though he committed no crime, Kenneth Williams' story remains deeply troubling, underscoring critical weaknesses within the FBI's internal reporting and analysis structure. His memo became a symbol of missed opportunities, bureaucratic neglect, and the devastating potential consequences of institutional oversight failures. In the wake of public revelations surrounding the Phoenix memo, the FBI implemented sweeping reforms aimed at addressing communication gaps and strengthening internal accountability. Williams himself remained within the agency, serving dutifully until his eventual retirement, but the shadow of his ignored warning forever marked his professional legacy, to this day. Williams' Phoenix memo is regularly studied within intelligence and counterterrorism circles, serving as a stark reminder of the importance of thorough, attentive analysis and prompt institutional responsiveness. His cautionary words, initially overlooked, later tragically vindicated, continue to echo across America's intelligence community. The signs were there, we simply needed to listen. Kenneth Williams' case stands as an enduring, solemn reminder. The cost of failing to act on credible intelligence can be measured in lives lost and national trauma that echoes indefinitely. Case 6, Babak Bruman. Babak Bruman was once a trusted FBI special agent, assigned to the Sacramento field office and later Fresno, California. Known among colleagues as confident, capable, and well-connected, Bruman had direct access to some of the Bureau's most sensitive databases. His work often placed him at the heart of investigations involving organized crime, narcotics trafficking, and national security threats. On paper, he was the embodiment of the Bureau's mission: protect and serve with integrity. But between 2015 and 2018, the reality behind Bruman's polished badge was far darker. During this time, he engaged in a calculated scheme to sell his position, trading his sworn duty for personal enrichment. His main contact was an associate with links to large-scale international drug trafficking and organized crime. This criminal contact offered Brumond a steady stream of bribes, large cash payments, luxury vacations in Las Vegas, rides on high-end yachts, an expensive Ducati motorcycle, and even the services of prostitutes. In return, Brumond leveraged his FBI credentials to provide protection and intelligence. Helping his benefactor evade law enforcement, Brumond's method of corruption was deliberate and sustained. He routinely used FBI intelligence systems to run unauthorized searches, checking whether certain individuals or businesses were under federal investigation. When his criminal associates were flagged in databases, Brumond warned them, allowing them to alter their operations or disappear before arrests could be made. His misuse of sensitive law enforcement information compromised multiple active cases, disrupted months of investigative work, and allowed dangerous criminals to avoid prosecution. What made Brumond's betrayal particularly insidious was the way he blended his illegal activities into the ordinary rhythm of his official duties. He used legitimate FBI travel as cover for meetings with his criminal contact. He met them in upscale hotels and private gatherings, disguising illicit transactions as casual social events. The bribes he accepted were not subtle envelopes of cash. Lavish dinners and luxury trips were part of an ongoing arrangement, yet, for years, Brumond evaded internal suspicion, aided by his outward charm and reputation as a productive agent. The motivation behind his crimes was plain greed and indulgence. Prosecutors later described him as a man living far beyond his means, addicted to the lifestyle that illicit money afforded him. Psychological assessments during trial highlighted a pattern of entitlement and moral disengagement, a belief that his position insulated him from consequences, and that his loyalty could be bought as long as the price was right. Brumond's undoing began when FBI Internal Affairs and the Department of Justice's Office of the Inspector General received a tip about his relationship with a known criminal associate quietly. Investigators launched a covert probe. They reviewed travel records, financial statements, and suspicious activity reports. Digital forensics confirmed multiple unauthorized FBI database queries linked directly to Brumond's login credentials. Surveillance teams documented meetings between him and his criminal contact, including one in which Brumond accepted a large envelope later determined to contain cash. In September 2019, 19 agents confronted Brumond. During questioning, he attempted to deny wrongdoing, framing his relationship with the suspect as informal intelligence gathering, but confronted with detailed evidence, financial records, witness testimony, and intercepted communications, his explanations crumbled. He was arrested and charged with bribery of a public official, conspiracy, and unauthorized access of a government computer. Brumond's trial in federal court began in October 2022. Prosecutors methodically outlined the corruption, using photographs, bank statements, and witness accounts to paint a damning picture. The jury heard testimony from his criminal associate, who described how easily an FBI agent could be bought and the extent to which Brumond facilitated their illegal operations. Perhaps most damaging was the revelation that some fugitives avoided capture entirely due to Brumond's warnings. On sentencing day, the presiding judge delivered a scathing rebuke. You swore an oath to protect the American people. Instead, you sold that oath for cash, for vacations, for motorcycles and prostitutes. You betrayed not only the Bureau, but the very trust that allows our system of justice to function. Babak Brumond was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison, ordered to pay restitution, and permanently barred from holding any public office. His career, once marked by authority and respect, ended in disgrace. His name forever linked to corruption and betrayal. Today, Brumond's case serves as a stark warning to law enforcement agencies. The gravest threats to justice can come from those within, and unchecked greed can corrode even the most trusted badges. Case 7. Peter Strzok. Peter Paul Strzok Thugen was a seasoned and highly regarded FBI counterintelligence agent, renowned for his meticulous investigative skills and sharp analytical mind. Born in Michigan, Strzok served over 2 decades with distinction in FBI offices across the United States. His extensive experience led him to high-profile cases, including espionage and counterterrorism. where colleagues described him as unwaveringly professional and extraordinarily dedicated. Yet, beneath this impressive career lay a hidden vulnerability, an ethical lapse that would unravel into one of the most contentious internal FBI scandals in recent American history. Between 2015 and 2017, while stationed at the FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., Starzak played pivotal roles in two intensely controversial investigations: the inquiry into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server, and later, the investigation into alleged collusion between Donald Trump's presidential campaign and Russian operatives. Both investigations were politically sensitive, demanding absolute impartiality and professional integrity, unbeknownst to his colleagues. However, Starzak was privately exchanging numerous politically charged text messages with Lisa Page, an FBI attorney with whom he was having an extramarital affair. Starzak's method of misconduct was uniquely modern, disturbingly straightforward, and technologically brazen. Utilizing FBI-issued mobile devices, he exchanged thousands of private messages filled with explicitly partisan rhetoric, sharply criticizing then-presidential candidate Trump and praising Clinton. These messages explicitly referenced ongoing investigations, revealing disturbing personal biases. Most notably, one message sent by Starzak chillingly proclaimed, "We'll stop him," referring directly to Trump's presidential ambitions. When the messages became public in late 2017, a firestorm erupted. Although Starzak did not directly sell secrets or explicitly compromise national security, his private bias cast severe doubt on the FBI's impartiality and significantly damaged public trust in federal law enforcement. The revelation called into question the legitimacy of crucial investigations, leading to intense political and public scrutiny, and opening the FBI to unprecedented criticism. The mere existence of Starzak's biased messages severely undermined the integrity of both investigations and weakened public confidence in the FBI's neutrality. Psychological assessments of Starzak's conduct indicated no financial motivation or foreign ideological loyalty. Instead, evaluators determined he had succumbed to a severe lapse in professional ethics, driven by personal emotional investment and intense political bias. Experts characterized his behavior as indicative of impaired professional judgment, compromised by his deeply personal animosities and affiliations, an alarming departure from the fundamental principle of impartiality essential for all FBI investigations. Under immense congressional pressure, FBI's Internal Affairs Division initiated a swift and rigorous investigation. Internal audits uncovered the entirety of Starzak's text exchanges, revealing a disturbing pattern of politically motivated bias, confronted with irrefutable digital evidence. Starzak initially defended himself vigorously, asserting that his private opinions had never influenced his professional duties. Yet, faced with overwhelming public outrage and institutional embarrassment, FBI leadership quickly moved toward disciplinary action. Starzak appeared before a contentious congressional hearing in July 2018, enduring rigorous and relentless questioning. Lawmakers publicly confronted him with his own words, highlighting his personal bias and the severe implications for FBI impartiality. Starzak steadfastly maintained his professional integrity, yet his credibility was irreparably compromised by the public exposure of his personal biases. Following a prolonged internal review, the FBI officially terminated Starzak in August 2018, ending his decades-long career. Although he faced no criminal charges, the professional consequences were severe and permanent. His dismissal represented not merely a career collapse, but an institutional reckoning, prompting comprehensive reviews and policy changes within the FBI to reinforce professional standards and oversight. Starzak's final public statements remained defiant yet reflective. As he asserted before congressional representatives, "My personal opinions never affected my professional judgments. I deeply regret that my private expressions have damaged the FBI's reputation, but I remain steadfast that I acted impartially." Today, Peter Starzak's name resonates throughout intelligence and law enforcement circles as a stark cautionary tale. His case serves as a chilling reminder that in high-stakes national security and political investigations, impartiality is not merely ideal, it is mandatory. Any personal bias, even privately expressed, can irreparably damage public trust and institutional credibility. Ultimately, Strzok's story underscores an unsettling truth in the modern digital age. Private indiscretions can quickly escalate into public scandals, fundamentally challenging the impartiality upon which justice itself depends. Case 8. Terry James Albury. Terry James Albury was once regarded as a committed and capable FBI special agent, known among his peers in the Minneapolis field office for diligence, attention to detail, and a willingness to work in some of the most challenging investigative environments. Assigned to counterterrorism and national security cases, Albury had access to highly classified information intelligence that could directly influence federal operations against perceived threats to the United States. His career should have been a model of public service. Instead, it became a high-profile cautionary tale about the devastating consequences of breaking the oath to protect classified information. Between 2016 and 2017, while stationed in Minneapolis, Minnesota, Albury began secretly photographing and removing sensitive FBI documents. These were not incidental files or minor reports. They included highly restricted manuals detailing FBI undercover operations, surveillance protocols, confidential informant recruitment, and internal guidelines for monitoring specific communities. Many of these materials were marked with the highest levels of classification, intended only for authorized personnel within the Bureau. Albury's method was methodical but dangerously reckless, using his FBI-issued computer and physical access to restricted files. He took digital photographs of the documents directly from his screen and from printed copies. He then transmitted these images to a national media outlet, later confirmed by investigative reporting to be The Intercept through secure, encrypted communication channels. The content he leaked was later published in a series of investigative articles critical of FBI surveillance practices, especially those targeting Muslim American communities. From a purely operational standpoint, Albury's actions compromised sensitive investigative techniques. They revealed specific tactics and internal decision-making processes to both the public and potential adversaries. While no direct casualties were linked to the leaks, senior FBI officials testified that the exposure had a significant negative impact on ongoing and future operations, forcing changes in surveillance methodology and internal security measures. Albury's stated motivation was ideological rather than financial. During interviews and in court filings, he expressed deep disillusionment with what he viewed as systemic bias and overreach within the FBI, particularly toward minority and immigrant communities. In his view, leaking the documents was an act of conscience, a whistleblowing measure meant to spark public debate and reform. However, prosecutors emphasized that Albury bypassed all internal channels for raising concerns, choosing instead to disclose classified information in violation of the Espionage Act. The investigation into the leak began in early 2017 after The Intercept published a series of articles containing material that could only have come from internal FBI sources. A joint task force from the FBI's Inspection Division and the Department of Justice's National Security Division quietly traced the documents to the Minneapolis field office. By cross-referencing system access logs, timestamps, and document identifiers, investigators identified Albury as the sole individual with both authorized access and a pattern of viewing the leaked materials shortly before their appearance in the press. In March 2018, Albury was confronted by federal agents. He admitted to taking the documents and providing them to the media, framing his actions as a necessary moral stand. He was arrested and charged under 2 counts: unauthorized disclosure of national defense information and unauthorized retention of national defense information, both felonies under the Espionage Act. In April 2018, Albury pleaded guilty to both charges in federal court. Prosecutors, while acknowledging his cooperation after arrest, argued for a significant sentence to deter future breaches. They stressed that even well-intentioned disclosures could cause severe harm to national security. Albury's defense counsel highlighted his 17 years of service and lack of personal financial gain, portraying him as a man acting from moral conviction. On October 18, 2018, U.S. District Judge Wilhelmina Wright sentenced Albury to 4 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. In her remarks, Judge Wright acknowledged the sincerity of Arbery's concerns, but underscored the gravity of his crimes. There were legal and appropriate channels for raising your concerns. By violating your oath, you risked the safety of the American people and compromised the trust placed in the FBI. Terry James Arbery's case remains one of the most notable examples of an FBI insider leak in recent years. It underscores a critical truth regardless of motive. Disclosing classified information outside authorized channels is a serious federal offense with lasting consequences. His downfall serves as a sobering reminder that even those convinced they are acting in the public interest must operate within the bounds of the law or face the full weight of justice. Case 9. Mark Stephen Putnam. Mark Stephen Putnam joined the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the late 1980s as a promising young agent, intelligent, ambitious, and eager to prove himself. Putnam quickly earned a reputation for diligence and adaptability. Assigned to the FBI's Pikeville, Kentucky resident agency, he worked in the rugged Appalachian region, investigating a string of violent bank robberies and fugitive cases. In the small, tight-knit communities of eastern Kentucky, he relied heavily on local confidential informants to gain information about criminal activity. One of those informants was a 27-year-old woman named Susan Daniels Smith. Susan Smith was a local resident with deep ties to the community and connections to criminal circles. She became an asset to Putnam's investigations, providing tips and introductions that helped the FBI locate fugitives and recover stolen property. Over months of working together, their relationship moved beyond the professional. By all accounts, they developed a personal and, eventually, a sexual relationship. In the spring of 1989, Susan claimed she was pregnant with Putnam's child, a revelation that would set in motion one of the most shocking scandals in FBI history. On June 8, 1989, Putnam arranged to meet Susan. He later claimed the meeting was intended to discuss her demands that he leave his wife and support her financially. The meeting took place inside his government-issued vehicle in a secluded area of Pike County, according to Putnam's later confession. The conversation quickly turned into a heated argument when Susan threatened to tell his superiors and his wife about the affair and pregnancy. Putnam, fearful for his marriage, career, and reputation, snapped. In a sudden act of violence, he strangled Susan to death after the killing. Putnam drove to a remote mountainous area and concealed her body down an embankment. He then returned to his duties, attempting to carry on as if nothing had happened, when Susan was reported missing. Putnam played a role in the initial investigation, masking his involvement for nearly a year. The case went unsolved, though suspicion grew within the investigative community. By hindsight, inconsistencies in Putnam's statements and mounting circumstantial evidence led the FBI and Kentucky State Police to intensify their scrutiny. Investigators revisited the timeline of Susan's disappearance and re-interviewed witnesses. The pressure closed in, and in June 90, Mark Putnam confessed. In a dramatic admission, he led authorities to the location where he had disposed of Susan's body a year earlier. Putnam was charged in Kentucky State Court with murder as part of a plea agreement. The charge was reduced to manslaughter. In court, prosecutors detailed how an FBI agent, sworn to uphold the law, had used his position to manipulate and exploit an informant, then taken her life when she became inconvenient. The defense argued that the killing was not premeditated, but the result of a sudden, emotionally charged confrontation. On June 12, 1990, Putnam pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 16 years in state prison. The case made national headlines, marking the first time in history that an active FBI agent had been convicted of homicide. Media coverage was relentless, painting a grim portrait of a man whose double-life dedicated agent and secret lover collapsed under the weight of his own actions. In prison, Putnam reportedly kept a low profile, serving just over 10 years before being released in 2000 for good behavior. By then, the case had been immortalized in books and documentaries, often cited in discussions about professional boundaries, ethics, and the inherent power imbalance between law enforcement and informants. Mark Stephen Putnam's case remains a dark milestone in FBI history, a chilling reminder that personal misconduct, when combined with unchecked authority, can have deadly consequences. His fall from a promising career to a convicted killer demonstrates the catastrophic cost of crossing professional lines and allowing personal entanglements to dictate irreversible actions. Case 10. Eduardo Valdivia. Eduardo Valdivia was a respected FBI special agent known for professionalism and calm competence throughout his law enforcement career. Stationed in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, Valdivia had spent years protecting American citizens and investigating complex federal cases, earning the trust of both colleagues and supervisors. To those who worked alongside him, Valdivia represented the FBI's ideals: integrity, discretion, and discipline. But on December 15, 2020, aboard a crowded Metro Red Line train near the medical center station in Bethesda, Maryland, Eduardo Valdivia's image as a disciplined, trustworthy agent unraveled abruptly and violently. What unfolded within those subway doors would shock the public, shaking confidence in the judgment of an FBI agent entrusted to protect the nation. That day, Valdivia was off duty, traveling among commuters when he encountered Stephen Slaughter, an unarmed civilian passenger. According to witness testimony, Slaughter approached Valdivia, reportedly asking for money and initiating verbal interaction, rather than de-escalating the seemingly minor exchange. Valdivia's reaction became inexplicably severe and escalated quickly, without any confirmed physical aggression from Slaughter. Valdivia suddenly drew his FBI-issued firearm and discharged several rounds, striking Slaughter and seriously wounding him. The scene aboard the train erupted into chaos. Panicked passengers scrambled for safety as gunshots echoed in the confined space, filling the carriage with confusion and terror. Metro security cameras captured the violent event vividly, recording in disturbing clarity how rapidly the scenario unfolded from a brief verbal interaction to gunfire within mere seconds. Immediately following the incident, Valdivia asserted self-defense, claiming he felt threatened and reacted according to his training. But as details emerged through investigation, surveillance footage, and eyewitness testimony, disturbing inconsistencies began to surface. Multiple witnesses emphatically stated Slaughter displayed no aggressive behavior warranting deadly force. Security footage further corroborated these accounts, indicating that Valdivia significantly overreacted, employing excessive and unjustified force. His claims of immediate threat unraveled quickly under the weight of video evidence. The aftermath of Valdivia's actions reverberated through the FBI, prompting swift and serious inquiries by federal and local authorities. A joint investigation led by the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office, the Metro Transit Police, and internal FBI investigators systematically dismantled Valdivia's initial narrative, concluding that his actions constituted a dangerous abuse of authority and misuse of lethal force. His once sterling professional reputation quickly collapsed into public scandal and institutional embarrassment. Analysts scrutinized Valdivia's psychological motivations, characterizing his behavior as indicative of impaired judgment under stress, combined with a troubling disregard for protocol governing deadly force. The underlying reasons behind Valdivia's drastic response remained ambiguous, lacking ideological or clear malicious intent. Yet, his reckless disregard for life was impossible to ignore. Experts speculated an impulsive reaction, possibly triggered by stress, psychological strain, or underlying fear, a reaction tragically unbefitting a trained federal officer responsible for public safety. In May 2022, after exhaustive investigations, Eduardo Valdivia faced criminal charges filed by Montgomery County prosecutors. The charges included first and second-degree assault, unlawful firearm discharge, and reckless endangerment. The indictment sent shockwaves through law enforcement circles. With FBI leaders forced to publicly confront the fallout, Valdivia resigned from his FBI position later that year. Amid increasing public scrutiny and mounting evidence against him, his trial commenced in Montgomery County Circuit Court in June 2023, drawing considerable media coverage and public interest. Prosecutors carefully presented compelling evidence footage from security cameras, emotional testimony from terrified witnesses aboard the train, and meticulous forensic analyses highlighting the unnecessary severity of Valdivia's response. Throughout court proceedings, Valdivia displayed a reserved and stoic demeanor, calmly yet insistently maintaining his original stance that his actions were justified under perceived threat. Despite overwhelming evidence to the contrary, yet the weight of evidence proved damning. Facing near certain conviction and significant incarceration, Valdivia's defense negotiated a plea agreement. In August 23, Valdivia pleaded guilty to reduced charges in a carefully negotiated arrangement, receiving probation and a suspended sentence rather than immediate imprisonment, despite avoiding prison time. His law enforcement career ended irrevocably, and his professional reputation lay permanently shattered. His final statement in court was chillingly indifferent. "I acted to protect myself. The situation unfolded rapidly. I regret the outcome, but acted based upon training and instinct." His unemotional explanation left observers disturbed by his apparent detachment and failure to fully acknowledge the gravity of his actions. Today, Eduardo Valdivia's case remains a sobering lesson about the fragile boundary separating lawful authority from reckless violence. His severe lapse in judgment aboard that metro train stands as a haunting reminder that those entrusted with public safety bear extraordinary responsibility. The public expects federal agents to maintain composure, restraint, and sound judgment under stress. Valdivia's failure to uphold this trust underscores an unsettling vulnerability within the very institutions designed to protect society. Ultimately, Eduardo Valdivia's story vividly illustrates the terrifying consequences when law enforcement officers overstep boundaries, acting not from duty or reasoned restraint, but from impulsive reactions and unchecked authority, highlighting a profound, unsettling truth even the most astute. You've just discovered 10 shocking cases of FBI agents who betrayed the badge Robert Hansen, John Connolly, Charles McGonigal, Mark Rossini, Kenneth Williams, Babak Brumand, Peter Sturzak, Terry James Albury, Mark Stephen Putnam, and Eduardo Valdivia, agents trusted to uphold justice, yet choosing corruption, betrayal, or even violence. Which story shook your trust the most? Let us know down in the comments. For more gripping true crime cases like these, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. Remember, sometimes the greatest threat to justice comes from those sworn to protect it.